Hello, all you lovely people. I hope you're having a fabulous Friday. We are wrapping up our Jeff Ed for the week as normal with our Friday Food for Thought session. And so we're going to spend the next 30 minutes chatting through a topic that comes up all the time in the nutrition space, protein powders. So I'm going to be giving you a little bit of information about what they are, how they're made, the differences between them, how to choose them, what you might look out for when you're buying them, and then how you might use them as well. So the practical side of it, we'll chat through. So I'll go through all of that in a little bit once everyone's checked in and boiled the kettle and sat down to join me for a cup of tea. And please send through all your questions as we go, so I can answer any of them. Hopefully this is quite topical for many of you. If you're just into the Jeff Life community, you'll see there's protein powders that go around a few times in some of our recipes and ideas there. And if you are on the one-on-one and you're following one of our programs, you'll see it's also an option in terms of the protein-rich portion that you can add to a meal. So we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. We are live in all sorts of locations. So Jeff Together, Jeff Life Facebook page, Jeff Together UK, and on the Jeff page. I will be popping between all of those. We're also on YouTube and maybe another place or two that I can't remember. But one of those four places, I'm going to get your questions. So come and join me there, Jeff Together, Jeff Life, Jeff Together UK, and the Jeff Facebook page. I'm just getting them all loaded up so you can let me know that you're here. You can say hello and let me know how your week's been. Let me know if this is something of interest to you, if getting sort of or looking at protein options is something that is applicable to you. There are lots of options out there, so we want to make sure that you're making some good decisions in that space. All right. So Jolene is here and excited, swiping in for Kelly's crazy crew. Brilliant. Collecting your Jeff Ed dots. I hope, guys, make sure that you log it and you are collecting all of those dots. All right, who else is here? We'll give guys just a minute or two before going into the detail of it so I don't miss anyone. Okay, I can't find it on any of the other pages. So at the moment, just Jeff Together. So you guys are. Leslie, how's it going? Looking forward to this interesting topic. Ava, I haven't seen your name pop up for a couple weeks. I hope you are well. Please send some love to Kath today. I hope you guys are looking after him. Guys are having a good week by the looks of it. Finishing, well, we're into the last sort of third of January, and there's a lot going on, and hopefully you're also putting in some hours like a captain is for our 25-hour workout next Saturday. So one of the places protein is pretty important is in terms of recovery. So if any of you are ramping up that training, I'm going through a big block at the moment, training a little bit more than normal, protein plays an important role in that. You'll know it's something we talk about all the time. Our first concepts, the first principle, the Jeff Nutrition, is meals that nourish you and combine protein, fiber, and fat into one. Most of the time, protein is going to be in every meal or every snack. Right? So a source of it in some way. I'm always going to suggest that food first approach is the way to go, because not only do we get the protein that's in a food source, but also vitamins and minerals, and sometimes there might be some healthy fats or some carbohydrates or some fiber or something that comes along with the protein. So we do get a lot of benefit to that. The application of protein powders is when maybe we can't get to it from a food point of view. So either practically, we don't have the time, or logistically, we're on an airplane or we're traveling or something and you aren't reliant, you don't always have a safe option. Going for a supplement and a protein powder to either fortify a meal or use as a supplement is quite useful. So it's never any better than food in terms of the outcomes, but it is just quite often more practical. And it's a nice way to get used, and we'll chat about how we use it and some of those reasons a little bit down the line. So first off the bat, food is always going to be a little bit better for all sorts of other reasons. A food first approach is going to be useful. Protein powders aren't necessarily better than food. Sometimes the application is just a little bit different. Okay. So send your questions in as we go, and I'll pick them up. I might stop and start as I go through the topics, so I don't miss anything. Jolene bought a flavorless protein powder. How do I sweeten a smoothie without compromising my nutrition? So it depends what you mean by compromising your nutrition. So if you use a little bit of fruit in there for the flavor and your source of starch or carbohydrate or fiber, you're obviously going to get some natural sweetness from the fruit that you use. Some vegetables are slightly sweeter as well, so that's fine. You can also, some yogurts are a little bit sweeter, and it's all going to depend a little bit. The thing with you can say which kind of protein powder, but I'll talk about some of the options a little bit later. But you can also use a sweetener of some kind, so a little bit of honey in there if you've got space for a little bit of extra, and it depends on your goals and what you're trying to do out of it. Or you can use a non-nutritive sweetener like some stevia or something like that, just to get a little bit of sweetness in it. It all just depends on the recipes. Join us on Monday, Tony and I in the kitchen, and we're going to give you a whole lot of ideas in the smoothie space and using plant-based proteins for that. So we might cover that again then. Lynette, it has been a while, so it's so good to see your name pop in here. Celeste, good question. Which is better, whey or pea? So I'm going to get to that in a minute. I'm going to answer that. It's on my little slides that will come up in a second. Bianca, opinion on using Nutritech whey for her. All right, we'll talk about some brands a little bit down the line. Lucy's here, Coach Lucy, gets asked about protein powder recommendations all the time. Kim, heard of people adding protein powders to food sources rather than shakes. Is this okay? Brilliant, good question. I'm going to talk a little bit about the application of them. So how we might use them either to fortify something else or just as a supplement, as something to take. And we can actually use it both ways. All right. Okay, just want to see if any of the other groups had anything pop up, but I actually didn't see the video arrive in any of them, so maybe not. So pop into Jeff Together, and guys, you can send your questions through. I'll see if I can get the other ones loaded up in a second, and answer any questions that come through there. So where I want to start with this is firstly categorizing proteins by where they come from. Right, so now there are three main types of proteins or categories of proteins that I like to look at. So I'm going to bring up a little slide that just shows that. And the first one is dairy and eggs. Okay, dairy-based protein powders are the most common, and they'll whey or casein. You'll see those terms. Milk protein is predominantly casein. It's about 80% of it. 20% of the protein you find in milk is whey. So what often happens in the cheese making process is the liquid that's drained off, that's where that whey protein is, and they end up drying it and making a powder out of it. So that's literally what whey protein powder is. Egg proteins made in a similar way in terms of drying them, and most of these proteins are made that way, sort of an extraction process and just dried. So you might find an egg white protein powder. Dairy and eggs are very, very good quality, and I'll get to quality in a second. But I like to see them in one sort of group. And quite commonly, when you're walking down the shopping aisles, you're going to see, mainly dairy-based things. They'll say whey, milk protein powders, casein, those sorts of things. So we'll talk about what all that is. And they normally the most popular because they're most effective, and I'll show you why when we get to the quality. They're also fairly easy to get because dairy is it's abundant, so it can get made fairly easily. And then collagen, which is getting a lot of interest at the moment, which is also animal derived and normally extracted from bones or skin or sort of soft tissue of animals. Collagen's a type of protein, but it's not a complete source of protein. So where dairy and eggs provide all the amino acids, collagen is lacking in some important ones. So it's not going to give you the same metabolic effect, but it does have a role to play, maybe not as big and wide as you'll pick up from the marketing of it, but it can be quite useful. Collagen and gelatin are pretty much the same thing. Collagen's just a slightly different version of gelatin, and gelatin's a food. So you get away with a lot of these kinds of things with food alternatives. Quite often in my kitchen, instead of spending the money on some collagen, I'll use gelatin powder to either thicken something, because it's a protein and a nice way to thicken it, or if you're making little gummy sweets, I've got a cool recipe for some gummy sweets that we can use. And there's some benefit to collagen in terms of soft tissue repair. So healing from anything like a tendon injury or a ligament injury, something like that, collagen's quite often used in that instance, and for skin health, but not as effective in general sort of protein intake as your dairy and egg-based ones. And then plant-based proteins, which normally aren't a complete protein, apart from soy protein, which is a really good quality one, and again gets a bit of a bad rap because of the myths around things like phytoestrogens and impacting hormones, and I think it's a little bit unfairly distributed on soy protein, but it's the best version in terms of its effectiveness and its quality as a plant-based source. So obviously derived from soya, the same things like tofu and edamame and tempeh and things like that. So it's a really, really good source of protein. And then your other plant-based proteins, rice, hemp, pea, they're all slightly different in terms of the types of amino acids that you get from them. And away from soy protein, when we're using the others, we normally look at trying to combine them. So when you're using a whey or dairy-based protein or an egg protein, they are complete proteins. The one source gives you pretty much everything you need. And with the plants, they normally shorten 1 or 2 amino acids that'll give you all the building blocks that you need for effective recovery or growth or health or immune function and all the things your body needs to build from protein. So if you combine different sources of plant proteins, you'll then get a complete version of it. So quite often when you're reading labels of plant proteins, and I've got a couple of examples I'll talk you through in a bit, they'll combine some hemp and rice, or pea and rice, or pea and hemp, or whatever the case is, to get a complete amino acid profile that is going to be more effective when you use it. So we'll talk to quality in a second. So those are kind of the 3 ways. I just want to sort of categorize them. There's sort of the 2 animal-based, and your whey or your dairy-based and your egg is really, really good in terms of quality. The second being collagen, which is a very small application and a little bit overdone, but it is something that's quite common at the moment. And then your plant-based ones. All right. When you're looking at your proteins on the shelf, or you're reading a label or something like that, you'll also see different terms for them. And there are three main terms. The first one is a protein concentrate. All right. So all that means is essentially the protein source has been concentrated. It was, in the case, if I use the example of the whey, it's been dried and formed into a powder. So it's just the protein version of the food is concentrated. It's the most common form that you'll get, and it's also the cheapest because it's the easiest to produce. You'll normally get about 80 grams of protein per 100 grams of the powder for any protein concentrate. Right. And it's normally the thing that you'll find the most abundant in a blend or a product or something. Then you'll get a protein isolate. And what that isolate means is that something's really just removed from it. And normally it's going to be a little bit of the carbohydrate or fat is taken out. So in the case of a whey protein isolate is much lower in lactose. So if you have a lactose issue, you'll look for an isolate because that is almost negligible lactose content. But the fat and the carbohydrate is much lower, and your protein content is then much higher because of that. So you'll get about 90 grams of protein for 100 grams of powder. It is more expensive because it's there's an extra step to do that, but it is more effective in terms of bang for buck. You're getting much more protein for the amount that you're actually eating. And then the last type is a hydrolysate, which is just a, they'll either take concentrate or an isolate and then almost pre-digest it. So the same process that might happen in your stomach or your gut, either using an enzyme or heat or something, it's just to split the protein into its little amino acid blocks. So all the little Lego blocks that make up protein, hydrolysate has that already kind of split up. The reason that has been done, it was originally sort of medically required because with any digestive issues or tolerance issues, the amino acids can be absorbed a lot quicker and a lot easier than the complete protein. So for some people who have digestive issues, hydrolysate can be a little bit better. It gets absorbed slightly quicker for the rest of us general population, but there's actually not much benefit to that. There's no reason to get it into your system that much quicker than using any of the others. And it comes at quite an expense, and it also comes with a very bitter taste. So those amino acids in themselves are very, very bitter. So hydrolysate of anything is often quite bitter. Collagen is a hydrolysate of gelatin. So the main difference between gelatin, the stuff that you make jelly with, and collagen is that collagen's been hydrolyzed, so it's split up the gelatin protein. And to be honest, the only benefit of that is that when it's collagen and hydrolyzed, it will dissolve in cold water, where gelatin won't. You need to heat the water to actually dissolve it. So it has exactly the same effect once you've absorbed it, but it's really just about whether you want, if you're consuming it, if you're happy for there to be a little bit of texture because it's gelatin and it hasn't dissolved, or if you're adding it to something warm, it is going to dissolve, and it's a hell of a lot cheaper when you're buying gelatin as opposed to collagen. But apart from that, it's pretty much the same thing. All right. So those are the three main kinds, and quite often when you're reading some labels, you're going to see that there'll be a blend. And the first thing, and there's normally a concentrate, and then I'll add a little bit of isolate to have a little bit better quality in there. Hydrolysate's not as common in most of your blends, unless you do find a few pure things. So you might see it labeled as whey protein isolate, for example, and then the protein content is going to be much higher. But that's the first step when you are looking at the products that you want to buy on the shelf. So I'll take a little second there to kind of talk through that. Got a couple examples in front of me, and these were from Wellness Warehouse. Obviously, we're working with them this month. They've got a cool range, and they've got a good ethos around it as well in terms of making sure the products that either their brand or that they get in don't have artificial sweeteners and thickeners and all sorts of other things. So there's a good quality control that goes into it, because, quick side notes, the supplement industry, particularly in South Africa, is very poorly regulated. So often what's in a product, you don't really know what's in there. You don't know if you can trust the supplier or the brand or whatever, because there's a lot of dodgy, underhand things that go on. One kind of way to look for that is, we talk about whey protein. It's actually quite an expensive thing to produce, a good quality whey protein. So if you're going there and you're buying a cheaper one, the chances are it might not have the best nutritional value. It might have other thickeners, and there might be some corn flour in there, or some maltodextrin or a sugar or something to get the volume up with protein content coming down. So it's not always cool, I'm going to go get a whey protein, I'm going to buy the cheapest one. Try and, if you're going to do it properly and get the best one that you can afford. Normally the price is going to be relative to the quality that's within that, but not always. So whatever your product is, okay, so this is the Wellness Warehouse vegan one, which is a blend of proteins. But you'll go onto the back, and first thing you'll do is have a look at the ingredient list and see what the first thing in there is. So there was one that came across as a request to me the other day, and it's a protein drink. The very first ingredient was maltodextrin, which is a sugar. If I'm buying a protein powder, the last thing I want in there is the first item. When they list it, the first thing is going to be the biggest volume. The last thing you want is that to be sugar. So make sure, firstly, that the first thing on the ingredient list is the protein that you're looking for. So in this instance, it's yellow pea protein, hemp seed protein. So the first two things on the list are a combination of two proteins. So you're off to a good start. The shorter the list after that, the better, because then you know that they're adding less things to it. There will be some flavors and sweeteners and whatever. What's quite nice, and one of the reasons I also like the Wellness Warehouse stuff, is they all come in an unflavored version, which means when we talk to the application of it, you can go wherever you want with it, and you know exactly what you're putting into it. The unflavored stuff will literally just be those protein powders, and you go. Right, but make sure the ingredient list is pretty short. The Wellness Warehouse whey, which is also a grass-fed whey, again, it's a nice thing to look out for. So they do one, and then one or two other products out there that do grass-fed whey. So the quality of the milk they're making the whey from is a little bit better, which normally is going to impact the fat components, which even though it's quite small, it's a slightly better quality fat. Omega-3s will be a little bit higher. It might be a source of CLA, which is a type of fat, and it's slightly better for, obviously, the cow and the environment and things like that. So it's a responsible purchaser if you're going for the grass-fed version. This one, whey protein concentrate. So, and then it's just, again, it's an unflavored one. So if it was flavored, it tells me what else is in there, but that's it, done. There are often other things added to protein powders that would be functional foods. I'm not crazy about them. I don't think there's a hell of a role to them, but all sorts of herbals and botanicals and this and that and whatever. Typically, I'm using a protein powder to get the protein out of it, so the less that's in it, for me, the better. And if you like a flavored version, finding one that's got the least sort of additional ingredients in there and things that aren't going to affect the nutritional value too much. So you've looked at the ingredient list, and then the next thing that you'll do is go and look at the nutritional value, which will be in the table like that. Okay. First and most important thing is the protein number. If it's below 80 grams per 100, the chances are it's getting diluted down with a lot of things. 78, 77, it's okay, it's not too bad, but 80 and above, if you get up to 90 because it's an isolate, fantastic. You're getting a lot of good value there. If it's a good price, that's great. But you want that protein number to be at least 80 grams per 100, and then you're off to a good start. After that, you'll then look at the carbohydrates and fat content. If you're using your protein powder as a meal replacement, so you want to get a complete meal out of it, and you're not mixing it with anything else, a little bit of carbs and fats in there along with it is fine. Okay, so there might be, in a serving, you might get away with protein coming down slightly and a bit of carbohydrates and fat, and then it's a meal replacement, completely sort of separate thing to the most suggested way of sort of using it. I'd like to rather get my fat and carbohydrate numbers down. So about 5 or 6 grams of each. If your carbs are under 10 and the fats under 5, that's great, because that's taking up maybe 15 grams and you're left with 85 to 80 grams of the protein. So carb and fat numbers as low as possible, and then that's good. It means pretty much what you've got in your packet is protein, and that's where you want to start. All right. So look for that, have a look through the label, and make sure you're getting something that starts off with that. Then there's also a little bit of trial and error because of flavors. So some things taste a little bit different to others. All right. So vegetable-based ones compared to dairy are going to be very different. When you're using flavored ones, chocolate from this guy and vanilla from that, and they're all going to be a little bit different. Again, it's why I like using the unflavored ones, because I can control all of that. I can put the flavors in I want. It also doesn't mean I'm only stuck with chocolates and I want to do something different. You want to have 7 different flavors of protein powders in the cupboard. So unflavored, in my opinion, is the most useful thing to stock up with. All right. Talking about the quality of proteins, then, so I've spoken a bit about there being these different ones. You've got your whey, and you've got your egg, and you've got your veg. So I just want to bring up a table to show you a slight sort of difference amongst sources of protein. The best quality that you're going to get, that one at the top, is milk protein concentrate and whey protein isolate. That number of 1, that's a scale that we use to pretty much express the quality of the protein, how well your body absorbs it, the quality of amino acids, and how much it actually kind of puts into action. So the reference number is really 1, so that's as high as it goes. You'll see third on the list is soy protein isolate. It's up there. It's a really, really good quality one, good source of amino acids. Pea protein is a little bit less. at 0.89. And then there's a big drop down to rice protein. So rice protein concentrate. So normally pea can be used on its own. It's actually a pretty good one on its own. But rice would be combined with hemp, or pea with rice, or something like that, because rice on its own isn't a really good quality one. I've also just showed you a couple of food versions to show you that food is brilliant as well. So milk, chicken breast, eggs, they're all up here getting that sort of one number, and that's great. And everything else kind of drops down, and our friend collagen at the bottom there was 0. So just out of interest. So that gives you an idea that there's different qualities. When you want to use protein, you want to use the highest quality because you're going to get the most value out of it, and the best sort of bang for buck, because it might be quite expensive at the end of the day. All right. Let me stop for a second and just see if I can catch any questions, and I'm just going to move on to the last little bit. Elaine, if kids don't get much protein, is it safe to give them foods containing protein powder? It is. One thing, the foods contain it, it's more like a fortification. So things like some bars or some cereals and things that have protein powder. It might be a milk protein concentrate. It might be milk powder, or it can be protein powder. It is fine. I wouldn't necessarily go down the supplement routes, just because that's, again, there are some obviously issues with quality and control of that. But foods that use it, or if you get a really good quality one and you want to pop it into something, to be honest, it's not the end of the world. It's just important about choosing a good quality brand to do it. Okay, that was the source one, which I'll chat to in a second. All right, just want to see, Coach Sandy, you're getting gelatin. Exactly. Save your money, don't waste it. Unless you want something to dissolve in cold water, go get collagen. I'm going to put out a little recipe for some little. One of the reasons I like gelatin and collagen, post-injury, and post-injury is a bit of a passion of mine. But when there's something sort of soft tissue that is like a ligament or a tendon that doesn't respond very well to other nutritional interventions because it doesn't get a lot of supply of blood really, so you can't get nutrients there. But the amino acids that are in gelatin or collagen are the same ones that we use to build up soft tissue. And there's some really interesting stuff that supplementing with that, plus a source of vitamin C, can improve how well those things kind of repair. So if you've got tendon issues, tendinopathies, post-injury, post-surgery, things like that, it's actually very useful. And to be honest, I think it's the main application of collagen, unless you're intolerant to dairy and egg and everything else, and you just want a protein. You don't want to use soy or something. So that's where it might fit in kind of down the line there. All right. Michelle, you're looking for a protein powder to use as a meal replacement. Best option. You don't want to skip the meal, so rather have something quick. So it just depends on the meal you're trying to replace. So if you want your meal to be low carb, you'll still choose a protein powder with a low carb number. If you want it to be balanced, then you maybe want to find something that's going to give you about 20 grams of protein, maybe 15 to 20 grams of carbs, and a little bit of fat in there. So there are some things in that sort of realm. There might be like a slim protein or something like that that can be used as a meal replacement. If you want to keep it lean and tight and whatever, you'll just use protein on its own. It can still sort of be used in that instance. All right, Celeste, which is a good soy, lactose, and gluten-free one. So these ones actually are set on the front somewhere. Most of them will advertise if there's soy, lactose. At Poppin, you can have a look at the wellness range of things. They do quite often tick all those boxes. So lactose will normally be in either a soy one or a plant-based one, or you have to find a bit more expensive whey protein isolate. Most of them shouldn't contain gluten unless it's been poorly manufactured and gluten's got in there somehow, or there's a thickener or a filler in there. There's no reason to really put gluten in. How do you flavor the unflavored ones? Good question. Thanks, B, from one of the other groups. I'll get to that in a second. And Siri's just noticed the terrible protein content of an old nutritional shake that are found in your kitchen cupboard is going straight in the bin. Save your money. Rather spend a little bit more and get a good value of it. So, all right, let's just bring up the next slide, and I'll just talk to that in a second. Some how-tos, and the two things kind of to split it here. The first is sort of the two ways of using protein. I like to split them in this way of thinking. The first is fortification, which would be increasing the protein value of a meal. All right, so ways you can do this: you can use a milk protein powder, you can actually use like a skimmed milk protein, a skimmed milk powder even to do that. But something that's dairy based, and you can add it to soups and stews and smoothies. It'll dissolve in there. If you're worried about your protein intake and you need to up it, it's a very useful and easy way to do it. You don't have to, in this instance, go and get the most expensive one, because your food is also going to give you a little bit of protein and a little bit of other things in there. So you can maybe, not get the highest protein content that's going to cost you a couple $100 extra, because it's going into meals. So if you're using it mainly in this instance, you'll get away with it. You can use it to bake. Next Wednesday, I'll cook. We are doing a protein pizza. The base, I use pea protein isolates in there. So to get something that's normally out of balance and out of whack, just a big hit of carbs, using some pea protein to fortify it and get a slightly better balance in. Casein is a nice one to bake with as well. Whey, you just need to be careful, it browns very quickly. So some of the various things, if it's something that's prone to browning, biscuits and cookies and things like that, using some casein or pea is going to be a little bit better than whey, unless you cook it for shorter. Nutritional yeast, I haven't mentioned it yet, but that's also a protein. So it's a deactivated yeast, and yeast is just protein. So it's another way to get some flavor into a food and increase your protein content. But it's a food. So it's a nice way to get a bit of sort of cheesiness into a dish, but also comes with some protein. And gelatin in the same way. So gelatin doesn't have flavor, but you might use it to thicken something. So soups or stews, or you might make a jelly out of it, or you might make a little gummy sweets or something. But you can use food-based things as a way to fortify a meal and get a bit more protein in. And then obviously, so like on Monday, we're going to talk about some smoothies. And again, you're fortifying it. If there's going to be another source of protein in there, like some yogurt or something, again, you might not need to get the most expensive one, because there's a bit of protein somewhere else in your recipe. And you can choose a dairy-based one, a soy-based one, a pea one. So with pea, I just want to mention that it's worth checking the taste. So pea is quite earthy. So play around with it if it's something that's new. I'm going to show you an example that I picked up here, but it is nice. It normally needs to go with other flavors as opposed to just on its own. But unflavored protein powders are great, because then you flavor it with your fruits instead. You flavor it with herbs and spices, with cocoa powder, with whatever the fat is that you might be adding. If it's a nut butter or something like that, you're going to get flavor from your food. And what I find with a lot of flavored protein powders is you pick up that artificial sweetener in the background. It's a little bit bitter. It's not so nice. But if it's unflavored, you can actually go a lot further with it and do some different things. If you're using protein purely from a supplementation point of view, so I need to increase my protein intake. I need a recovery protein or an in-between meal source of protein, and I just want it with water or milk. Get the highest quality one that you can find and you can afford. You're not cooking with it, and you're going to consume it as it is, and you want it to give you the best value that you're going to. So something with a protein number 85, 90 grams per 100, that's what you want to use. If you're using it around training and not with another food, that's what you want to do. In this instance, if you struggle with some gut issues, absorbing it doesn't really work so well, you might look at a hydrolyzed version, or something that adds one of the amino acids called leucine, which is the kind of master switch of protein synthesis. And the reason why dairy is so good is it's very high in leucine, which is the amino acid that turns on our protein synthesis. So you want to be looking out for that. And some people might advertise it's in there, or it's added, or it's been fortified. Your vegetable or plant-based proteins are normally quite low in leucine, so that's one of the reasons it's not as effective in that instance. Or again, if you don't tolerate dairy or soy or something like that, collagen would then fall in as maybe the last line in terms of something that you can use in that instance. All right, so you're either using it for some fortification to make meals a bit better balanced, or you're using it purely as a supplement just to get your protein up because you need a little dose of it here or there. You want to use it strategically, and that might just change the choice that you make slightly. Okay. Haley wants to know if the Wellness Warehouse ones that I gave an example of are the best. You've got the chocolate and unflavored. You love them. For the unflavored, you add cinnamon, banana, peanut butter, makes an awesome smoothie. Brilliant. So I don't know if there's anything that is the best in terms of a protein powder. They're all slightly different, but why I like these is because when I said the things that you're evaluating them for, the ingredient list is short. The thing that's at the front is protein. I look at the nutritional value, and these are 80 grams. Both of them are 80 grams. The pea protein a little bit lower because your vegetable is always going to be a little bit lower. But getting at least 80 grams per 100 from the protein, so it ticks that box. And the unflavored version, there's nothing else in it, so that's great. For me, that's great. There's no additives, there's no flavorings. I've got control of all of that. And the whey-based one is grass-fed, so for me, there are a lot of boxes that it ticks. What the perfect one is, I don't know, but it's good enough. And so I think it's quite a good option, and knowing a little bit about how they source and procure and have it made is also good. I picked up a couple of other examples as well. While we're on the whey protein one, you can just get like a little Health Connections whey protein concentrate. Okay, this one is 80 grams per 100. So again, it's unflavored, it's useful. It's not grass-fed, so the Wellness Warehouse one to me is a little bit better because of that aspect to it. Looking at plant-based, I said in your pea or your rice or your hemp or whatever, typically the protein numbers are going to be a little bit lower. I would try and choose a pea protein isolate because that's going to give you the most protein in a serving. So this Phyto Pro is an option, this Phyto Pro Thrive, and that's 86 grams of protein per 100. So really, really good quality. It is pea protein isolate. That's what you're getting in there. So good hits of everything. Good amounts of branch chains, fat low, carbs low. So that's all great. Compared to something else that has a slightly different role to play, this Soaring-free plant-based protein, which also picked up from Wellness. But to give you an idea, now this one, we have a look at the labels. There's a lot more kind of going on. It's a hemp and rice protein mix with all sorts of herbals and different things. But there's only 43 grams of protein and 50 grams of carbs. That's just because of the type of protein that they've used in it. So that is something that's going to be a little bit more like a meal replacement. I'm getting carbs and I'm getting protein. So I'm not going to add it to too much else because then all of a sudden I'm getting a lot of extra things. High carbs, high fats, whatever. But on its own, you might use that type of product to plug that. So I stuck that into a smoothie this morning for part of my recovery after a run. Got some coffee in there, some ice, got it up. I needed a little bit more protein, and I wasn't worried about keeping it veg, so I just added a little bit of yogurt. But for me, it served its purpose in that instance. So everything's got a slightly different way that you can go around using it. All right. Which brand pea protein? I'm using the Life Matrix yellow pea protein on Wednesday, Rushka. You can get that at Wellness as well. Pop up and get that. All right. So before I go on too long, I'm just going to get to some questions and try and cover as much so you guys can get back to your work days. All right, Margot on intermittent fasting. Pop onto my page. I've given my thoughts on fasting in general and the pros and cons and things to sort of look out for it. Obviously, if protein powder as the first meal snack, and then so there's no magic about fasting. Go have a look at that video. I think it might answer a lot of that for you. That's just on my coach's page and the videos there. Go and have a quick look. There's that's a full Jeff Ed on its own. How much protein would you get from nutritional yeast compared to pea protein isolate? So you get about 75 about 75 grams of protein per 100 because yeast is just protein, so that's all that's in there. But there's a lot of flavor that comes with it as well, so you're not really going to be using scoops and scoops of any other questions? Leslie, you've been using protein powders on and off, but never had such valuable insights into them as I've gained. Well, thank you very much. That's what these sessions are about, so thank you for the feedback. Cool. On to the one on using unflavored ones. What's great about that is you can then use your own. Vanilla essence, you get a vanilla flavor. Cocoa powder, you don't get any sugars, you don't get any sweeteners. If you want a bit of sweetness in there, you can add a little bit of honey, or you might use the fruit that you're doing it with. Or if you want to keep it tight, you can use a non-artificial, a low-calorie sweetener, like stevia or something like that. Celeste, again, it's a slightly longer answer I'm going to give you now, but I don't like Herbalife options for a couple of reasons. One of them is the nutritional values in terms of a protein powder, and the other, to be honest, the business model behind it. So I never recommend Herbalife. All right, I think I've got them all. Guys, if I've missed your questions, please feel free to send them through, even if you post them on the page and everyone can read them and see what the answers are. I'll be happy to spend the next little while answering them. I'll go to the bottom here, last couple of things, see if there is. Siri, you'd love to have a pea protein recommendation that's available internationally. So have a look in Europe. One of my preferred brands for those kinds of things, MyProtein, they deliver as well into Europe and UK. I think you're in Germany, so I'm not too sure. But go have a look at some of their stuff. I can get it sent over. Laura, brilliant, guys, fantastic. Cool. I think we've covered most of it. Apologies if I missed anything, but do send it through. Bit of insight into protein, what they are, how to use them, how to think about them, how to buy them, and maybe kind of get you guys up and running. Again, food first. But if you need to fortify some meals, if you feel like you're a little bit low, you aren't able to get protein into each of your meals, powders can go a long way to doing that. And this is kind of the application for it. So, guys, been good. Thanks for all of your engagement, interaction, and questions. Keep them coming, and I'll try to get to whatever I might have missed. And join us in the kitchen on Monday. Tony and I will be giving you some ideas, doing some smoothies with them. We're going to use some of these examples and show you a little bit more about all of that. Next Wednesday as well, we're going to do it in a pizza base. So come cook with me. We're going to have some fun. Have a great weekend. Join us tomorrow morning for the workout, and then get a bit of training in next weekend. So we're down to the last, 7 or 8 days before 25-hour workout. Tell your friends, bring everyone. We're going to have some fun. It's going to be epic. Guys, have a great weekend. Keep things nice and tight. Keep aware. Enjoy your day and a half off, though. And then we'll see you all again on Monday. Cheers for now. Bye.